Hello everyone! Last time we looked into the best JRPGs released in the 90s, but that was so last week. Today, we are jumping into the top JRPGs from the 2000s. This decade saw some pretty dark times, there's no denying that, but there were at least some positives here. We saw the success of the iPod, which finally allowed us to listen to all our cringy songs without carrying around one of these. We also had Napster and LimeWire to fill up our iPods, which absolutely none of us used because it was illegal and we're all law-abiding citizens. We saw the rise of social media, particularly MySpace, where we had to choose and make public our top 8 friends, then force our awesome taste in music onto absolutely everyone visiting our pages. And it was definitely My Chemical Romance at some point. It was also the time that we all survived that Y2K bug, which devastated society and changed the world as we knew it. But most importantly, it was the decade with some pretty amazing JRPGs. After the powerhouse era that was the 90s, how did the 2000s hold up for the genre? Did it continue strong or fall short compared to what many consider the golden age of JRPGs? This video will follow the same format with the same rules as my previous video for the 90s. I will be choosing one single JRPG for each year and the release dates will be when they were first released in Japan. This list is also just my personal opinion and I know it will be totally different to yours, so let me know what your favorite JRPGs are by year in the comments below. Before we begin, if you liked this video, it would help out a lot if you hit that like button and sub for more JRPG content coming soon. Also, hit that super thanks if you'd like to support the channel. Alright, this is the 2000s. Let's get into it. This is only the first year up and there are already some amazing JRPGs that are going to miss out. I know that titles such as Breath of Fire 4, Skies of Arcadia and Vagrant Story may be on top of your RPG of the year for 2000, but for me, I cannot look past Final Fantasy IX. After the more recent futuristic style FF games, Final Fantasy IX returned to the series' traditional medieval roots. Series creator Hironobu Sakaguchi even stated that Final Fantasy IX was his favorite Final Fantasy game. He described it as closest to his ideal view of what Final Fantasy should be. This game was such an incredible experience all round. The story, the world, the characters. Maybe not you, Quinna. And who could forget the ending? Not going to spoil anything because, you know, some people may need a couple more decades to get there, but it had one particular happy sad moment that I will never forget. There were also some pretty badass minigames, including Chocobo Hot and Cold and the Tetra Master card game. Now, something worth looking out for is a possible FF9 remake. While nothing official has been announced, in 2021 there was a GeForce Now database leak which listed a Final Fantasy IX remake. Square Enix seem to be remastering and remaking everything at the moment, so fingers crossed that we'll hear something official soon. The Final Fantasy series was on a roll here, with FF8, 9 and 10 being my top JRPGs 3 years in a row. Imagine a world where we still only had to wait 1 year for a new mainstream Final Fantasy game. FF10 was the first in the series to be released on the PS2 and took things in an entirely new direction. No longer did we have expansive world maps or the active time battles. Now we had smaller, explorable maps and a return to a turn-based system last seen in Final Fantasy III. My first experience with FF10 was in a department store. There was a shiny PS2 system with FF10 available for anyone to play. Lucky for me, there was no line, so I jumped right in and didn't stop until my mum pulled me away from it about an hour later. The whole opening hour was incredible. The graphics, the voice acting, the whole Blitzball opening cinematic with Sin wreaking havoc. I was hooked, but unfortunately I'd have to wait quite a while before I'd have another chance to play it again. Another mention has to go to Blitzball, which is my favourite minigame of all time. Having such an expansive minigame within the FF10 world was mind-blowing. Final Fantasy X is an amazing JRPG and an easy choice for the 2001 JRPG of the year. 2002 had some amazing titles including Kingdom Hearts, Xenosaga and Grandia 2, but I cannot look past the third installment in one of my favourite series of all time, Suikoden 3. The game is set 18 years after the events of the second game and marks the first time the series had run with 3D graphics. The unique thing about Suikoden 3 is that the game is told in 3 main points of view. The Trinity Sight system allows you to switch between Hugo, Chris and Geto, plus certain other characters, including an epilogue chapter where you can play as the game's villains. Some people might not like this narrative structure, but I love being able to do this in my RPGs. Just about everything else that I loved about the Suikoden series was here. Recruiting over 100 characters, building up your HQ, 1 vs 1 duels, large-scale war battles. I loved it all. At the time, I even held this game as my favourite in the series, but after going back to play Suikoden 2 a second time, that one set itself as my clear favourite. With Suikoden 1 and 2 currently being remastered, my fingers are crossed that Suikoden 3 is next on the list. I just hope they finally fix that damn wall. This next pick may be a bit more unique compared to some of the others, but I have so much love for Arc the Lad Twilight of the Spirits, and I think another playthrough is needed very soon. Like Suikoden 3, Twilight of the Spirits is told through multiple points of view. First we have Karg, a young commander of the Yubel Defense Corps. Then there is Dark, a human Deimos half-breed. I loved this story. Watching these two very different characters journey across the lands to fulfill their goals and seeing how their paths cross was the best part of the game for me. The combat was also a lot of fun. Just like the other Arc the Lad games, this one featured tactical turn-based combat, but this time characters could move in a circular system rather than the traditional grid-based movement. Twilight of the Spirits is one game that people never really talk about. If you've played this classic, give me a hell yeah. Now, there were 2 absolute powerhouse titles in 2004, but only one can be crowned the King of the Year. I am sorry Dragon Quest VIII, but Shadow Hearts 2 Covenant is too good. This is a direct sequel to the original Shadow Hearts and continues the story of Yuri, a harmonixer who is able to fuse with the souls of monsters. Here's a fun fact, when you look at awesome protagonists in the dictionary, it will actually refer to Yuri as an example. He is an absolute badass and one of my favourite characters ever. Where the original Shadow Hearts and its prequel Kudelka were dark and full of horror themes and imagery, Covenant is a bit lighter, adding quite a lot of humour into this mix. Everything about this game is top tier. The story and characters are sensational, the exploration, the secrets and the RPG mechanics are elite, and the combat, which builds on the Judgment Ring from the original, is one of my favourite battle systems ever. Shadow Hearts Covenant is a must-play JRPG in every regard, and while the series may be long dead, there is at least Penny Blood on the horizon. This is a spiritual successor developed by many of the same staff, so look out for that. The winner of 2005 may be a surprise to some, especially since Kingdom Hearts 2 was also released this year, but Tri-Ace's Radiata Stories is a game that I cannot overlook. One of the standout features of this game is the branching storyline, where the player can choose the human path or the non-human path. Radiata Stories is designed to be played multiple times, and I thought this was really cool. This world is highly dynamic with day and night cycles, and each of the 300 NPCs having their own lives, jobs, personalities, and schedules. There are also a whopping 175 characters that can be recruited, each with their own quirks and backstories. Unfortunately, there has yet to be a port or remaster for modern consoles, but if you do have a chance to play this one, you should definitely check it out. 2006 is the toughest year of the decade for me, as games like Trails in the Sky SC and Xenosaga 3 would have taken top spot most other years. Not to mention Persona 3 and Final Fantasy 12 also being pretty solid games. While Suikoden V was unfortunately the final mainline Suikoden game, the good news is that the series finished on a high, which was important considering Suikoden 4 disappointed many fans. The game takes place several years before the first Suikoden game and is set to the south in the Queendom of Falena. Everything you'd want from a Suikoden game was here, and its writing and structure was the closest the series had been to Suikoden 2 since Suikoden 2. There are some crazy highs here and many moments that are among my favourite in the series. Also, seeing George Prime, a mysterious character who could be recruited in Suikoden 2, play such a major role in this game was incredible. Long live the Suikoden series! FF7 Crisis Core tried so hard to take top spot here, but Trails in the Sky the Third was too good to ignore. Sky the Third is the final title in the Sky trilogy. Where the first two chapters followed the journey of Joshua and Estelle, this final chapter's darker story follows Kevin Graham, who is a secret agent of the Septian Church. He is my favourite character from the entire Trails series, which is saying a lot considering that there are so many amazing characters. Sorry Ren. Sky the Third is essentially a massive dungeon crawler. You'll spend the game working through an otherworldly dimension known as Phantasma. Kevin and his squire are tasked to investigate this realm and then find a way to escape it. Loads of other characters from the Sky series can also be summoned to help out, so you can basically assemble your Sky Dream Team. The combat is also better than it had ever been up to that point, creating some seriously epic boss battles. I also have to mention the memory doors, which were one of the best things about the game. These doors are optional content that present the player with side stories from some of the main characters in the series. Some of these are incredible, like the one that provides some insight into Ren's childhood. I really bloody hate this saying, but if you know, you know. If you're a fan of the series, these doors alone make Sky the Third worth playing. 2008 was an easy year for me. Valkyria Chronicles stood out far more than any other game this year. This strategy RPG is incredible and completely different to every other game on this list. Valkyria Chronicles is set in the fictional region of Europa, which is loosely based on Europe during World War II. You play the role of Welkin Gunther, the young commander of the Gallian militias Squad 7, fighting to repel the enemy invasion. The epic story isn't the only reason why this game is so good. The tactical war-themed combat was also top tier, running around the large battlefields, finding openings and strategically utilizing the strengths of the combat classes never got old. Valkyria Chronicles' success spawned 3 sequels, which are awesome, a spin-off which is not awesome, and even several manga titles which could be either awesome or not awesome. Maybe I'll get around to reading them one day. If you're interested in playing this classic, it was recently remastered for the PS4 and Switch, so this is the way to go. " 2009 featured a few games that I really enjoyed. I know many may disagree, but I did think Final Fantasy XIII was a decent JRPG as a whole. Tales of Graces was also a lot of fun, but the winner for me is Star Ocean 4: The Last Hope. I really liked this game, even if Lim tried her hardest to ruin the experience.
Sure, don't forget to water it, Kay.
Set hundreds of years before the events of the first game, Star Ocean 4 follows the journey of Edge and Raimi, 2 members of the SRF who embark on humanity's first interstellar travel mission in hopes of discovering new hospitable worlds. The standout feature this time around was the ability to explore many different planets, which, surprisingly, is something that no other Star Ocean game really allowed you to do. The combat was also one of the best in the series, second only to Star Ocean 6. The combination of the new blindside mechanic with the ability to string skills together created some really great battles. If you want to give Star Ocean 4 a shot, a remastered version was released for the PS4 and PC in 2017. And then it was the 2010s, a time when smartphones became smarter than most of us, a time when internet forums were almost completely taken over by social media, and a time when Leo DiCaprio finally won his Oscar. But it was also a time with loads of other great JRPGs, but that's a story for another day, probably next week, so stay tuned for that video coming soon. What did you think of this list? Do you agree with my favourites, or would you change a few things around? Let me know in the comments below. This was Hellfire RPGs, thanks for watching. If you liked this video, hit that like button and sub for more RPG content coming soon. It would help me out a lot. See you next time.